Well, welcome to a very special episode of Wesley Live. Reverend Dr. Colleen Derr, president of Wesley Seminary, joins us to share her incredible story from a truly incredible year. Dr. Derr, thank you so much for your willingness to walk us through your experiences from the last 12 months.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me to talk about it, Joel.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I couldn't wait to have you on and to share the story because I think it's a story that so many need to hear. So I'll just start at the beginning, actually towards the beginning of last year. If we go back to March of 2020, the world closed down, literally. So what were your initial thoughts, your hopes, your fears when this happened, both personally and as president of Wesley Seminary?
Yeah, I remember the day very, very well. I was in the car with my husband driving to a Women in Ministry conference event that was being held in North Carolina. And we were a little bit down the road when I got a call from President Wright. And so the news had started to break, was just starting to break. And he said, I'm pulling the executive council. I sit on the university executive council. I'm pulling the executive council together. And we need to have a conversation about what are we going to do, and I was like, well, I'm kind of in the car on the way somewhere. Do you want me to come back? And his response was something akin to, well, it'd probably be helpful to have you in the room. And so we turned the car around, and of course, thankful that we did. And that began this incredible sequence of events. Of course, the seminary and the impact on the seminary and the impact on the university were happening at the same time. And for the university, it was incredibly significant with all of these students on campus. And of course, the seminary is located just off the university campus, Marion campus. And so we are then in light impacted as well by things that were happening there. And so many, many days of many, many meetings trying to figure out and reading the signs, right? We were all trying to read the signs. And at first it was like, okay, we're all gonna, 2 weeks and then we'll be back. And then it became this, oh no, it's not gonna be 2 weeks. Maybe it's gonna be a month. And we all kept trying to predict when the end would come and what would the end look like. And I know that none of us had any idea of the duration or the incredible impact personally and university-wide, and then of course nationally and globally. No one had any idea of what that impact would be. And so I would say early on, it was let's contain it as much as we can. Let's protect our people as much as we possibly can. And let's keep this thing going in terms of the university and the seminary. Let's just keep the work going. Let's not overreact, but let's act appropriately was really kind of the initial early responses. And then, of course, it didn't take terribly long until we realized this is something beyond any of our ability to control or manage. And so then what does it mean for a longer impact for the seminary and for the university? And for the seminary, of course, the seminary was already been online from day one. And so 10 years of doing online theological education. So for us, it wasn't this significant pivot. Oh my word, we're face to face and we got to go online. It wasn't that, which many, many of our peer institutions in the world of seminary life, that was their reality in March, April, May. For us, that wasn't. For us, rather, it was asking, okay, we have these residentials, what we'll do? Okay, we'll put those online too. Frankly, that was a pretty simple decision. The bigger conversation at Wesley really was, our students are people who are in the church. These are people who are actively living the life of ministry. They aren't the typical seminarian, which is, preparing for someday ministry. Now, these are people, all of them fully enmeshed in the reality of ministry life. And their world just completely upended. Everything that they know, everything they expected, everything that they was already set in the systems were disrupted in terms of how are we now going to do ministry. And we recognize really quickly, if we are truly committed to equipping Christian leaders and truly committed to being an actual partner in ministry with our students, then our response needed to be one of how can we now serve them? Recognizing how we've delivered it. Yeah, it was online. Yeah, it was distributed. They were already distributed. But it was, okay, now what do they need from us in order to continue to succeed? And so our approach to curriculum, our assignments, our expectations on timeliness, all of that had to be thrown out the window, right? And all of a sudden, we all had to adopt this very flex and fluid reality. It was incredible that we retained the kind of retention that we did, but I think it's in part of this response. The other layered thing that we didn't notice right away, but it evolved, was the Zoom fatigue and the online fatigue, right? We all have it.
Yep.
And so our students who their entire life was in person and being embodied with people, and then their seminary was the only thing that was remote and primarily digital. Now their entire life is remote and digital.
Right.
And so how does the seminary stand out from the rest of that? And how does this not become just another thing that is exhausting and is a burden? And then, of course, on top of that, the stories of our students who themselves were getting COVID. We had students pass from COVID during the pandemic. And then our students who were trying to minister to families and individuals in incredibly and frankly horrific realities that they were experiencing. And so that is how we responded in the seminary. And so here we are, somewhat on the other side, not really. I suppose 2 years from now, we'll know actually when we were on the other side, maybe. But we're saying, okay, what were some of the things that we pivoted to? What were some of the fluidity that we added? What were some of the flex that we created that is actually better, regardless of the pandemic? And that can really enhance our approach to theological education so that we can truly be a partner and to be able to equip them for the work that they are called and need to do.
Amazing. So not only are you leading a dynamic seminary through this global pandemic, but you also decide then, or maybe you didn't decide, but you were asked to lead a major task force here at Indiana Wesleyan University. So, how did COVID impact that, or did it? And then what was that experience like for you?
Yes. Yeah. As I said earlier, Wesley is part of this, is embedded in this beautiful large institution called Indiana Wesleyan University. And there were some incidents through the course of the year, really, just random, unrelated incidents that began President Wright to say, I think we need to ask the question, how can we live better in community with one another? We know we're called to community. As Wesleyans, we understand the valuable role community plays in our faith formation. And so we are committed to the community. And of course, this is a Christ-centered academic community. That's how IWX describes themselves. And yet it's this beautiful community of people who come from all different expectations and understandings and belief systems. But how do we live together in community when we've got all of these differences? And at the same time, it's not like when anybody thinks it goes, right? We are committed, deeply committed to our connection to the Wesleyan Church. We are the Wesleyan Church. IW, Wesley Seminary, we are the Wesleyan Church. And so the Wesleyan Church has a set of beliefs and convictions and practices and lifestyles that we are responsible for and that we are aligned with. And so you've got that, and then this community that isn't always totally in agreement with that or totally in alignment with that. And so how do we live together in community with one another, holding to these firmly, but also engaging well with those who we've invited to be a part of the community who aren't quite as committed to this. And it's a challenge. And all of us as believers should always be living in that challenge, right? Because we aren't called to stay in our circle of 12. Well, what were some of his last words? Go. Go, you 12. Go. Well, 11. Go. And so we recognize this call and this need in order to engage with others who aren't completely in alignment with us. It's our mandate. And we do that at Indiana Wesleyan in part by inviting others who have yet to find Christ, who have yet to experience fellowship of believers, who have yet to understand deeply the commitments of our faith. We invite them to be a part of our community so that we have an opportunity, right, to evangelize and disciple. And so it causes this challenge. And so I was asked to co-lead a task force that just looked at that question: how do we live together in community? And so that began the work that began in August. So yeah, in the middle of pandemic, that work began in August and really ran through the end of the year, still continues somewhat, but the intensity of it was really from August, December, and spending many, many hours in conversation with individuals and groups, reading, researching, hearing from people. So we assembled a task force of internal to the university and external experts to get together and to listen well to the stories and to people's perspectives and experiences, and then to say, okay, so how can we move towards becoming this loving, beautiful community committed strongly to our beliefs and convictions? And so the challenge of that in a pandemic, of course, is distance, which also became a little bit of a blessing. So we were able to engage with individuals, especially the external experts, who probably wouldn't have been able to be a part of it if our assumption was we're going to get together in a conference room in Marion, Indiana. But because no one assumed that, we were all still in our own home offices, right? We were able to engage with individuals who otherwise might not have been able to lend their expertise and their insights. And it allowed, frankly, some of the people who we asked to share with us a little bit of anonymity. There's a little bit of protection in that as well, as opposed to getting called into an office or and how that feels, especially if you're a student or a staff, how that might feel. And so I think that there was a loveliness to the timing. I do think that related in general to the work of the task force, but what I've seen across in the seminary, in the university, in the church, Joel, as you know, the seminary is engaging in what we call listening sessions. And I believe we've had 5 so far. We have 3 more to go, in which we're gathering groups of people from literally around the world to ask them, ministry leaders and educators, to ask them, what has happened? What has changed? What has been your reality? And what do we now need to do differently And what can you say to us as a theological institution in terms of how we can continue to equip you and ministers and leaders well? And what we've consistently heard, we experienced it in the task force, we've experienced it, seen it in the seminary, and we're hearing of it in the church global, is that, well, COVID, yeah, there were some things that COVID created independent of itself. Probably the biggest thing it created was a pressure point, so that things that were already not quite right, things that were already probably needed attention, but weren't painfully obvious that they needed attention, it became a pressure point, and those things became exposed. And exposed in a way that sometimes makes us incredibly uncomfortable, but exposed in a way to which we can no longer ignore. And said, okay, we've got to see this, we've got to acknowledge this, and now we've got to ask, so what are we going to do about this? And so from my perspective, that's one of the blessings of COVID. People will think probably, how on earth can you call COVID a blessing? But I think that we need to capture that, right? Looking for the opportunities amidst the pain, looking for the ways to go forward with strength in the midst of feeling quite at times defeated and frustrated. How can we find glimpses of the positive and the joy and the hope in the midst of what has been incredible suffering and pain and loss? And I think we need to do that. I think we need to set our eyes on, okay, Lord, what can you teach me because of this? What can I learn about you, about your kingdom, and what you desire for me and for Wesley Seminary and for Indiana Wesley, for the church? What can you show us? And how can we be better because we've lived through this season that none of us would have chosen, but how can we be better on the other side of it? And so that was part of the work of the task force, and that's part of the work of what we're still doing in the seminary, and still asking those questions and making those explorations. And I hope, listeners, wherever you're at, that's part of the work that you're doing as well.
Amen. Amen. Well, you mentioned some joy in there too. How in the world, with all of that going on, did you manage to pull off 2 weddings last year?
Yes. How incredible. Yeah. Our Wayne's and my youngest 2 children, Tyler and Anna, both were engaged before COVID. So they had dates set before COVID, and we just held our breath. So Anna, our youngest, her wedding was in July, and Tyler's wedding was in September. And May was, like, what is happening? Do we need to reschedule? And Anna actually had 2 completely different weddings planned. And many of her friends, she's of that age, she's 24, where everybody's getting married. So many of her friends who were to get married in May had to completely scrap the big wedding, right? And just go to a backyard, and them and the preacher, one of her friends eloped, because it was the only option. City Hall, before they closed City Hall, it was like, they're closing it Friday, we got to go today, right? I mean, that was the reality we were living in, right? Absolutely. And so saying, oh my goodness, so what can we do? And so she planned these 2 totally different weddings, not knowing really, up until probably just a couple of weeks before the actual day, which one she would run. Anna lives in Michigan. The wedding was in Michigan. We're, of course, in Indiana. A lot of our kiddos are in North Carolina and South Carolina. And so it's like, what is every state doing? Because they all were doing something different. Are we going to be able to travel? How can we get there? Can we gather? I mean, oh my goodness. Will we be able to eat? So all of a sudden the caterers are flaking out and they're not coming in. At one point, Anna wrote me one day, and she said, "You know what, Mom? We'll just order Domino's pizza." Like, I had a breakdown. Like, afterwards, she told me, "Mom, I was just kidding." But what? But yeah, and so all of a sudden, and you know what it And then we were like, we're going to be able to have it. And we had the wedding, and my parents were able to be there, and my sister was able to come, and all of our kids were able to be together. I mean, our whole family spread all these states were able to be together. And there wasn't one person who after the wedding got COVID because they participated in the wedding. Wow. So that's a praise the Lord that he protected. It was outside, the reception was in an open air place, but that was a praise the Lord. And the whole time we're having these conversations about hers. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? You know, will it just be a backyard? We're like, but Tyler and Sarah will be fine. Theirs is in September.
Right.
Like the joke's on us. Yeah. And so then we got honest, and then we're like, I'm not really sure. And things started to shut down again. I don't know if you remember that, but things started to get tight. They got married in Southern Indiana, in the hometown of IU, which got hit really bad in September because IU came back. And so, yeah, all this, the praise the Lord, they ended up also being able to gather. Both my parents and Wayne's parents were able to attend. Incredible. Wow. And again, no COVID, and the wedding also outside, but no COVID post those wedding gatherings, which we're just incredibly thankful for. But you know, you're trying to plan a wedding, and especially as the mother of the bride, the mother of the groom, you don't get quite as caught up in the pressure of the details. But as you know, as the mother of the bride and wanting your baby girl, you know, this is my baby girl, want my baby girl to have the day she's always dreamed of, and wanting to make that happen for her. It's easy to get caught up in, you know, the dress and the cake and the flowers and the girls' dresses and who's in the wedding and seating arrangement and all of those kinds of things. And the day becomes about the details. And it's not unusual for there to be a lot of tension related to the decisions around some of those details, right? And let's all face it, we all admit all of that is pretty trivial in the scheme of life. But at the moment, it's a really, really big deal, right? Yeah. And but man, throwing a wedding in COVID, all of a sudden, that stuff really became insignificant. And all of a sudden it was like, what matters? What is really happening here? And what is really the most important thing that we accomplish? You know, not that we've got the reception we wanted, not that we have all the decorations we want, not that we had the caterer we wanted, because we didn't. But it wasn't Domino's, but it also wasn't what we had originally planned. But you know, what is it that actually matters that we do accomplish? And you know, of course, it's about uniting two families who are united with the Lord. Amen. That's what matters. Yeah. And this establishing of a new home that is grounded in the Lord. And so all of a sudden, what really mattered, and then of course, when the family was all able to get together, some of the stuff that maybe would have mattered otherwise, what somebody wore, what somebody said, or where somebody sat, none of that mattered. We were just so thrilled to be together. And recognize that as the incredible gift it was, not the assumption or the entitlement we probably would have seen it as prior. And so they still probably weren't fully the days either of my children would have planned, but they were both really incredible and beautiful, and thankful for them.
That's amazing. So the title of this was A Year Like No Other. And we talked in the previews leading up to it about your amazing highs. And then we also talked about your unbelievable lows. And you've gone from July with a wedding, September to a wedding. So let's fast forward a little bit to November.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm getting goosebumps now just even thinking about it. I can't imagine. So can you walk us through that time and the days, weeks, and months following November?
Yeah, so really pretty early on when we recognized what the severity of COVID and what it would mean, especially for the elderly and those who had physical compromise. The protection of your own became really significant, right?
Yep.
So the September before the March of COVID, Wayne and I had relocated from Indianapolis area to Marion, and we relocated my 80-something parents. We built houses side by side, downsized, and built houses side by side of one another so we could be together. And what a blessing that was. So March hits, we're all sent to our own homes. We got this incredible fear that our parents will get it. And what would that mean for them? We knew it could be catastrophic if they did. And so we became this beautiful little unit, right? And Wayne did all of the shopping. So he was the designated, you're the one that goes out, right? And everything came in and got washed, and like y'all were doing, right? He would go early to get the toilet paper, get in line, right? That was Wayne. And so our focus was on keeping my parents safe and keeping his parents same ages in the mid 80s living in Pennsylvania, but also, we got to keep my parents safe and we got to keep my parents safe. And that became the focus. And, it had become common for us in recent years to say, there aren't many people our age who still have all four of their parents living. Right. And we would say to our children, you've got all four of your grandparents. They're all in their 80s, but you've got all four of them. It's unusual. It's not something that we take for granted, this reality of ours. And so COVID threatened that, right? And we're going to do everything we can to protect them and, hound them to stay safe and to be careful and wear your mask. Oh my word, my dad hated wearing that mask, and he could never get it on right. And it's like, Dad, let's get the mask. And, and he was never sure about any of it, and, but worked so hard to protect them. Like that really was the desire. Of course, the gift was we spent so much time together with my parents. We couldn't travel to be with Wayne's through most of it, but we spent so much time every day. We were with my parents every day, ate at least one meal together every day. We would take turns when it was cooked, we ate at my house. When Wayne and I picked up takeout, it was at their house. And that was the rhythm, right? Yeah. And oh man, the conversations around the table were just incredible. And what a gift those months were that we had no idea, right? What a gift they were going to be. And like I said, then the wedding, and Dad was able to pray the prayer of blessing over Anna and her husband. We have a recording of it. And then he actually performed the ceremony. He married Tyler and his wife, and Wayne's parents were able to be there. What incredible gifts. But early November, we got a call from his mom that she wasn't feeling well. And a call, actually it was the day before Election Day. Election Day sticks in all of those in the US, it sticks in all of our minds. And she wasn't feeling well. And what became, I'm not feeling well. Dad has an earache and I'm just really tired. And Joel, we never, and this is just amazing to me looking back, but we never thought, oh, I wonder if they have COVID. We just never, because they had literally not left their house for 9 weeks. So the notion never dawned on us that what they could have was COVID. And so Wayne was able to go out and spend some time with them. And what a blessing to be able to see his mom. That was November, 5th? By November 20th, she had passed. And Wayne came back, and then Wayne and I contracted COVID. And then my parents contracted COVID. So it was the domino of our worst nightmare. His parents, us, my parents. And so between November 5th and my dad passed on November 24th, in between that, all 6 of us had COVID. And praise the Lord, his dad, who was 88, very, very mild case, literally just an earache was his only symptom. My mom, who's 84, had relatively mild symptoms, incredible fatigue. She was tired, low-grade fever for a little bit, but otherwise pretty mild. My symptoms were more than that, but I worked every day through them, and the task force work became really intense in that time. So my COVID was really the 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving. And the week of Thanksgiving is when my symptoms were the most severe. And the work of the task force was really intense then. And so through it, had all day meetings through it, which was really, a blessing. I immersed myself in other people's pain on purpose. And it kept me going. And it didn't allow me to think about the what ifs of my life, which you can't control anyway, right? And so when the waves of the reality of COVID began to hit, I hadn't been dwelling there. It was like, oh my word, Wayne's mom is in the hospital. The doctors tell us she's not going to make it, that she won't survive this. Wayne, who had cold-like symptoms of COVID for about 5, 6, 7 days, took a really significant turn for the worse, and started running very, very high temperatures and very low oxygen. So he ended up with pneumonia and COVID lung. And a funny story in the midst of it, because you got to laugh, right? So 3 of our 4 children are in the healthcare field. We've got a PA, a doctor, and a nurse. And then we've got a preacher, right? So our 4 kids. And so Wayne is incredibly sick. I mean, to the point of he would get such coughing fits, he would pass out. And again, it's, like, how stupid are you, Colleen? But obviously pretty dumb about the whole thing. Like, still thinking, but he's going to be okay, right? We're just going to wait this out. He's going to be okay. And telling, letting my kids know, the minor updates. And I get a call Tuesday morning from the preacher, not from the healthcare, not from my doctor son or or the preacher. And he says, all right, Mom. So we've all met, meaning the children. We've all met and we've decided that you are not going to be Grandma Wilson, because my mom loves to be the doctor to my dad. She always said that was like a family joke, right? Mom knew more than the doctors when it came to family joke. And so you're not going to be Grandma Wilson. You're going to actually take Dad to the doctor. And you're going to do it today. And I was like, all right. So called the doctor. The doctor said, bring him to the ER. Drove him down to where we used to live, which is where his doctors are. And I'm waiting in the car in the parking lot, and Wayne goes in, and the doctor said, he said, pack a bag just in case. So his bag's in the back seat, and Wayne goes in and he said, I'll call you if the wait's very long, because you know what ERs are like, right?
Right.
So I'll call you if the wait's very long. I'm like, all right. And 20 minutes later, he sends a text and he said, they say my oxygen is dangerously low at 80, and they're admitting me, they won't let me leave. You can drop off the bag at the door, but you can't, I couldn't come in, you know, because at that point you couldn't even enter the hospital if you were a non-patient. And so I dropped the bag off and I went back to the car and I sat there for 2 hours. I thought, what do I do? Like, do I just leave him? Is that what you do? And eventually that's what I did. And so I drove back home and called the kids. Zachary, you were right. He needed to go to the hospital. No idea how sick he was. So that was Tuesday. Wayne's mom has not passed yet, but we knew her time was, we were just waiting for the call at that point. By this point, my dad is showing symptoms. And that day he goes to CVS to get a test, a COVID test. My mom got one too, just because. And Friday, while Wayne is in the hospital, his mom passed away. And the pain of him alone, it's what you don't want anybody else to ever have to experience, that kind of loss in isolation. That day I talked to the doctor and she said, Wayne's COVID doctor. And she said, your husband's a very sick man, but we're going to work really, really hard. This is November 20th. We're going to work really hard to get him home to you by Christmas. And it was the day my dad got his positive result. It's a tough day. Wayne determined that that was not going to be his story. And when his mom passed and my dad became positive, he was determined to get out of there. That Friday night, this might be more than you and anybody else want to hear, but that Friday night I drove Dad, living in Marion, but I drove him down to his doctor that evening in Indianapolis. They ran all his stats and everything came back. His oxygen, his temperature, everything was normal, in the normal range. And so we came home and it was almost an hour and a half drive, an hour and 20 minutes drive. And I drove and Dad sat up front. What a beautiful time we had. We laughed and we joked and we carried on. It was incredible. And of course I took it for granted that it would happen again. But that was a gift from the Lord, that moment, without knowing it. Wayne determined that he was not going to be in the hospital till Christmas, or worse yet, have the same fate as his mom. And so he said, I'm not going to lay in this bed and let COVID determine my outcome. And so he began to walk in his hospital room, hooked up to, he had the oxygen and the IVs and all the other that you're hooked up to, the monitors. And so it wasn't very far he could go, but he walked 5,000 steps a day. He sang, he listened to sermons and to music. He was absolutely determined to get out of there. But that night, driving Dad, I was exhausted. I had COVID myself, of course, full-blown COVID at that point. I was emotionally exhausted. And it's 10 o'clock at night, getting in the car to drive back to Marion. And I was like, I can't do this, Lord. I can't do it. I don't have the strength in me to get in that car and drive safely home. But I don't have another option. So you're going to have to do this for me. you're going to have to help me actually make this. And Lord, remember that promise that you will never give us more than we can handle, that you will never ask more of us than we can handle. I think this is it. I think I'm there. The next morning, Dad took a turn for the worse in the middle of the night. The next morning, we called the ambulance, and they took him, running a high fever, low oxygen. They took him. He was admitted to Marion General on Saturday. And then thus began his journey, which was a quick journey. By Monday, he had developed pneumonia himself. And by Tuesday, I got the call, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, your dad isn't going to make it. You need to come say goodbye. Thankful that the hospital, in part because my mom and I had COVID, although at this point we didn't have symptoms anymore at this point, at least not fevers. Neither of us were feverish. The hospital allowed us in to be with him for a while. We weren't with him till the end, but we were with him for a while. We were able to say goodbye. It was an incredible experience that you cannot prepare for. And you never want to live, but you don't want to miss. And so thankful that she and I could have that. Our pastor from the church, Pastor Steve Denneff, we attend College Wesleyan. Incredible to me that we're in Dad's, of course, he's on the COVID floor, he's in isolation. We're in the room. They double gowned us, and the one was like a rubber gown. It's it's November, it's the cold out. So her and I, and it's like, we don't know how fast this is going to happen. So you hurry up, you get to the hospital. We didn't even take our coats off. And they're double gown us. The one's the rubber, they put rubber gloves on us. They put 2 masks on us and a shield, right? Wow. And so you're, there we are, and go into the isolation room with Dad. In there saying goodbyes, saying the things that we think he needs to hear so he can let go, and he can allow himself to pass. Doing all of the stereotypical things that I thought I was supposed to do, right? Like sing. Well, let me tell you, first of all, I've never been a good singer. I love to sing, I'm just not even good at it. In that moment, you can't remember any of the words to the songs, and there was no hymnal nearby. So I'm like, oh, I don't know how that song goes. I don't remember the words, but I'm supposed to sing. So doggone it, I'm gonna sing. So the masks, and your nose is running and your eyes are running, and oh my, it was not pretty at all. But I hear a knock on the glass, and there's Pastor Steve Denneff. Came on the COVID floor. Put his own health and life at risk. Just incredible to me that that's a pastor. That's a pastor. And he was only allowed to stay for 15, 20 minutes. Then the nurses made him leave. He told me, he and I were chatting about it recently, and he said, I begged the nurse to let me in the room, but she wouldn't let me in the room. But on the other side of the glass, praying over us, in that moment. Pastors for your people, that's an incredible gift. And they need you in that moment, even if they themselves are pastors. They need you in that moment. So dad passed. In the midst of it, Wayne had nothing short of a miraculous recovery. Went from the max oxygen on the one source to, the next step would be something far more severe in order to provide oxygen. to and trying to manage fear of blood clots and all of the rest, to he's dropping how much oxygen he needs almost overnight. He was able to be home by Thanksgiving, not by Christmas. He had home health and home oxygen for 2 weeks, but an absolute miraculous recovery. And I joke that the Lord looked down and saw Mom and me and how pathetic we were, because we were pretty pathetic at this point, and said, oh my goodness, they cannot handle anything else. We've got to take care of this guy. And so thankful for the miraculous recovery that Wayne experienced, and to be able to have him home and with Mom and I, because we're still contagious. So then it was just the three of us, and we couldn't be near anybody else yet. And so his mom's passing, the hard part is you can't have a service. You can't gather family. We still haven't had anything for his mom. She was cremated, but we haven't had any kind of family gathering celebration yet for his mother. Dad, Mom wanted him in the ground, and so we had to wait a couple of weeks till Wayne was allowed to leave the house. So we waited a couple of weeks, and just incredibly blessed to be able to have a graveside. It had to be outdoors, and it was limited in numbers. So it was family only. And all of my kids were able to be there. My brother and his wife were able to come. My Uncle Norman, of course, my dad's brother, and a couple of his kids were able to be there. And we were able to have this beautiful, precious family time to say goodbye to Dad. And not what anybody would have expected. The kind of very public life my father had lived. Traveled the world many times, preached to thousands, and you would have expected something so grand of a farewell for him. But my cousin Beth said to me, Norm's daughter, that day, she said, you know, Colleen, we have had to share our dads our entire lives with the church. Her dad also very, very public figure, Earl and Norm Wilson. We had to share them our whole lives with others. Today he was just yours. And so another gift from the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Incredible loss, incredible pain. It's terrible. I hate that he's gone, but I love for him that he's gone. Right?
Right. Yeah.
But what another gift. So over and over and over again, the gifts from the Lord. And as you can see, I'm still a mess talking about it. That's why I've put you off till May. I probably should have put you off a little bit more.
Sorry.
But when you look back at the hand of the Lord,
Amen,
all along the way, all of the ways he went before, and he was right there in the midst, and his protection and his care for us. It's incredible. And yeah, we lost Mom, Dixie, and we lost Dad. But we were incredibly blessed through it. And so, yeah, it was a November, December, like none other. And for everyone who's lost someone, the first year is a year full of firsts. So we just had the first Mother's Day. And so that's what this year will be for us. Learning what it means to live without them, you know, recognizing the moments where it's so keen for me that his voice is gone. For Dixie, that her advice, solicited or not, it's gone. And so how now do we live with that loss? But also rejoicing because we know, right? This is the hope that we have. We know that their bodies are fully restored. We know that they are glorified in heaven, where there is no sickness and there is no sadness, and certainly no death. And would we, mom says all the time, I miss him so, but I wouldn't wish him back for my sake. Because where he is where we all long to go, right?
Yeah.
And so the incredible hope that we have of glory, and how precious that is after this year.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing this, for your incredible leadership, and just being willing to open yourself up and share what you've been through. Like you said, I know I've been pushing you to share the story, and I hope it wasn't too soon, but it's something that a lot of us needed to hear, and to see your incredible faith. As you said, maybe you're not quite on the other side yet, but in the process, and we certainly are thankful for your leadership and praying for you and your family, and so grateful that Wayne did recover and that you and your mom recovered, and
Yes.
Yeah, what a blessing you are to each of us. So thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Absolutely. Well, everybody has a story of pain from this year. Everybody does.
Yep.
Everybody has a story of loss from this year. And I was hesitant to talk about it. First of all, it's just so personal. But it's, my pain isn't any worse than anyone else's pain. It feels worse because it's my pain. But there is an unusualness to the series of events that happened for us. And I think I'm recognizing that. But more importantly, that if others can come to know what the Lord can mean to them through hearing what he has meant to us, then it's worth being vulnerable and crying like a baby on social media.
So sorry to make you relive that, but
no, it's, you know what, we relive it all the time anyway. You can't help but not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, thank you, and we're praying for you and your family, and appreciate you and your time today, and for your openness and willingness to share this with each of us. So,
well, thank you, and appreciate the seminary team and the way that, oh my goodness, the team just kept working. The team kept showing up. The team kept just killing it for the seminary, and for me to be able to say, I've got to focus on my family, and I've got to focus on my grief, and to know that the seminary was well cared for by you all, and it was such also a blessing to me. And the Lord, through that faithfulness, the Lord was faithful, and the seminary has just been doing so well in these days and months, and that too is a blessing of the Lord, to say, let me lift this burden, this concern of yours for this season. And just so thankful for all the many people who came alongside and supported and prayed. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I pray for your family every day or every week. And oh my goodness, the honor to be prayed for by someone else. And they have been felt, and they have made a difference. And so I have been blessed, our family has been blessed over and over again. So that is the story, right? That's the true story.
certainly a year like no other.
A year like no other. Yes.
Right.
I don't want to live it again.
Yeah.
But thankful for what the Lord has taught me, thankful for what he has done in me and what he's shown me about himself through it. Thankful for that.
Amen. Well, again, thanks for your time. And for those of you watching, thank you so much for watching. And well, I would say it, but I'll let Dr. Derr say it since it's hers.
We are Wesley, and you belong here.
Blessings. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Derr.
Thank you.